skyrocketing deficit. Joining us now to talk about that, Sean Spicer, Communications Director for the Republican National Committee. Just a quick note, we normally bring in the Democratic National Committee Communications Director as well. He could not join us today. So what about it, Sean? Neither side seems to have provided a whole lot of information on how we're going to get this deficit taken care of. Should that be a major topic at this upcoming debate?
Well, it very well may be, but I think that beyond the debate forum, because let's face it, you're talking about 30-second, 60-second answers. You have to look beyond the debate forum and see what those candidates, both sides, have put out there. On the one hand, you've got President Obama, who talked about in 2008 that he was going to put a plan in place to cut the deficit in half. Instead, we've had 4 years of trillion-dollar-plus deficits and a national debt that's at $16 trillion. On the flip side, Governor Romney's laid out some of his proposals to cut the deficit, and Paul Ryan has actually passed a budget that puts us on a path to a path to balance. So, I think that while the debate, you're never going to be able to, in 60 seconds, talk about an entire plan to get you to balance. I think that you have to look beyond the debate forum and see what they've put out there. And on the case of Romney and Ryan, they clearly have a plan and a path to cut the deficit and to get us towards balance.
Well, as you know, President Obama blames the Republican Congress, Republican-led House, I should say, says that they are much of the reason for, the dysfunction, I guess, in Washington.
Well, the problem with the president's argument is that for the first 2 years, he had a supermajority of Democrats in both the House and the Senate. And so he could have done anything he wanted, anything with respect to either jobs or cutting the deficit or anything else. And frankly, the focus was on Obamacare and everything but those two things. It went the opposite way. We actually shed jobs and we increased the deficit and the debt. So for the president to then turn around and say, well, the Republican House is the obstructionist, one, they still control the Senate that hasn't passed a budget in 3 years, and two, the Republicans came back into power largely because the president hadn't kept those promises with respect to both jobs and the deficit. So you saw a reaction because he wasn't doing that the Republicans came in, and they're the ones who have been sort of fighting for fiscal discipline and to get the deficit back under control.
Again, devil's advocate, because I could practically hear, your colleague from the DNC saying this. 800,000 jobs a month were being lost at the time the Obama administration took office.
Well, what you have to judge is what the president said he was going to accomplish. So there's no question that he inherited, the circumstances that he did. But as a candidate, he made it very clear that he understood the economic situation that we faced and that he had the proper policies to be able to put in place and solve that. We're now applauding 7.8% after 41 months of plus 8% unemployment. The deficit, as I mentioned, it's not that it had been cut at all. It's gone the exact opposite way. For the first time ever, we have $4 trillion budgets with deficits and $16 trillion in debt. So there's been no progress on that. And the other one is, again, after 4 years, we're barely seeing a glimmer of light. That's not exactly what we were promised. And that's the standard you have to hold him to, is his own. The promises that he made and said, okay, where are you with relation to what you promised us?
You've seen the poll numbers. Governor Romney seems to be tied nationally with the president. Is that a trend you think will continue?
I think more and more people are starting to turn into the election right now, and what they saw in that first debate was, for the first time ever, the two candidates really giving America a clear choice as to the direction of this country after November. And so I think that that sort of momentum, intensity, and enthusiasm for Governor Romney is going to continue for the last 3 weeks of this campaign, because the choice that they're seeing versus, a government-run economy versus a free enterprise-run economy, a plan to cut the deficit versus a plan to continue to grow it, is one that they really find appealing in Governor Romney, and recognize that he has the background of turning things around, making better things, and coming into tough situations and finding the right solution. I think you're going to continue to see more of that choice over the last 3 weeks, and people are going to start to go in his direction.
22 days, and we'll know the answer. Sean Spicer from the Republican National Committee, thank you.
Thanks, John.
Well, in the meantime, new concerns